Cave explorers, what was your worst nightmare underground? Firstly, a bit of background about me. I've been a caver for over 15 years. I'm a team medic for cave rescue, a firefighter, and a specialist paramedic for the UK Hazardous Area Response Team, HART. I have extensive experience and knowledge. I'm by no means a novice when it comes to underground environments. Last Saturday, we entered a fairly dangerous and unstable mine. It's a horizontal level mine, essentially a deep pit. It was recently reopened after about 100 years and is known for frequent collapses and extremely unstable, hazardous areas. We were fully equipped with all the relevant gear for a standard walk-in walk-out trip. No rope access required. The trip into the mine went well. We examined specific hazards and admired some pretty mineral formations. On the way out, we passed through chest-deep water for about 300 m and had to go under a precarious section of timber work, basically holding up the world above our heads. The other 5 members of our team, also either paramedics or cave rescue personnel, went first one by one, which is standard practice when navigating dangerous sections of a mine. I was last in line, about to take my turn, when I was suddenly struck by an overwhelming sense of fear. I stood still, watching my best friend turn away from me to go under the collapsed stoop. When the ground suddenly disappeared beneath my feet. No warning, no movement, just boom. The next thing I knew, I was trapped in a chest-deep hole under 4 feet of water with hundreds of thousands of gallons forcing me down as it surged through the opening. My chest was being crushed, forcing the air from my lungs and triggering extreme panic. From above, all my team could see was a swirling vortex of water draining rapidly through the hole. All 5 were convinced I was dead. The hole was impassable, and they couldn't reach me. After what felt like forever, I suddenly felt myself falling, still submerged, still unable to breathe. What had happened was that the floor, which also acted as the ceiling of the void below, had fully collapsed into a hidden stoop. I dropped about 30 feet, landing on my neck, then shoulder and chest before being swept down a deep flooded winds, a vertical mine shaft that doesn't reach the surface by the torrent of water above. At that point, I knew I was too deep to swim back up. The current was too strong, pulling me downward. I involuntarily inhaled a small breath of water. It was agonizing. My foot got caught on something. I kicked back and pushed as hard as I could, hoping it was the right direction and not just plunging myself deeper into the abyss. I felt completely terrified and desperate not to die. I remember the crushing sadness of thinking I'd never see my children again. That emotional wave hit hard. I knew the next breath would be my last. It would be water and then it had all be over. But as I took that involuntary breath, fully expecting it to be the end, I realized there was air mixed with the water. I choked and spluttered. Then I gasped again and I was breathing. I was in a chamber. I scrambled to the side. The roof was collapsing further and water was flooding the space rapidly. I was about 20 to 30 feet below where I had just been standing. I checked my gear and threw a space blanket over myself. Once the water started to subside, I looked up and to my enormous relief, I saw a headlamp. I took off my helmet, pointed my light at myself, and gave a thumbs up. My best friend and I both teared up, a mix of shock and joy, but we quickly realized I was still in serious danger. The team sprang into action. 3 of them returned to the cars to get ropes and gear. The other 2 jumped the hole and made their way to the far end of the mine where they recovered an old scaffolding barrier. When turned upright, it looked like a ladder, but it was heavy. The 2 remaining cave rescue teammates linked 5 caving belts together and lowered the makeshift ladder into the void. With huge hesitation, knowing this was probably my only chance, I re-entered the same water that had almost killed me minutes earlier. I swam out, traversed a crumbly, exposed climb, and jumped to the ladder. It was a true do-or-die moment. As soon as my weight hit the ladder, the belts began cutting into the floor, causing more collapse from the ceiling and drawing the hose edge dangerously close to the rescuers above. At the top of the ladder, I was still about 6 feet below the hole. I stood on the top rung and grabbed a belt with one hand, at which point the ladder spun out from under my feet, leaving me hanging. I kicked out and found a small fault in the rock, then pushed with everything I had. The leaning wall began collapsing with a loud rumble. My head and shoulders were above the rim, but I had no grip. The lip was covered in thick, slimy ochre mud. I kicked again, leveled my body, and rolled over. Finally, that was enough to get me out. From the moment the ground gave way to the moment I escaped the hole, it took about 30 minutes. If you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to subscribe for more. This happened back in 2018, but it still feels fresh in my mind. I wasn't there physically, but I followed every update like my life depended on it. It's one of the few stories I've ever obsessed over to the point where I couldn't sleep. I still remember refreshing news pages at 3 a.m. hoping to see the word rescued. A youth soccer team in Thailand, 12 boys aged 11 to 16, and their assistant coach, just 25 years old, went for a little adventure after practice. Nothing extreme, just a bit of exploring in a cave system called Tam Lang Nong Non. It was supposed to be a short trip. They parked their bikes, left their cleats, and walked inside. Then the rain came. Not just a little drizzle. We're talking monsoon downpour. The kind that turns the earth into an ocean. Water rushed into the cave system and filled the chambers like a rising tide. Before they knew it, their exit was underwater. They were trapped. No food, no light, just darkness, water, and silence. For 9 days, no one even knew where exactly they were. The cave was massive, over 10 kilometers long, and incredibly dangerous to navigate. Rescue teams from all over the world flew in. Thai Navy SEALs, British cave divers, American military. It was international chaos down there. People were crawling through tight, pitch-black tunnels underwater, not even knowing if the kids were alive. And then one day they found them. 2 British divers made it all the way to Chamber 9 and found them sitting together on a rock shelf above the water. Alive, starving, weak, but alive. I remember watching the video. The diver says, "How many of you?" And one boy responds, 13. You could hear the relief in the divers' voices. It hit me like a punch to the chest. But finding them was just the beginning. The cave was too flooded to just walk them out. Some parts of the route took over 6 hours to dive through. These were tight squeezes, zero visibility, and sharp rock everywhere. And the kids, they didn't know how to swim. Some didn't even know how to float. They had been stuck in darkness for over a week. Just getting them out alive felt almost impossible. The rescue plan was insane. Each kid would be sedated. Sedated to keep them calm and unresponsive during the dive. They'd be strapped to a diver with a full face mask and carried out like unconscious cargo through pitch-black water. One wrong move and the mask could shift. The kid could drown. It felt like a gamble every single time. And the worst part, a Navy SEAL died during the mission. San Kunan, a former Thai Navy diver, ran out of air during one of the supply dives. That's when it hit everyone just how deadly this was. If an elite diver couldn't make it, what chance did these kids have? But somehow they did it. Over the course of 3 days, every boy and the coach were brought out alive. I still remember watching the last ambulance drive off and just exhaling like I'd been holding my breath for 2 weeks. The story could have ended as one of the worst tragedies ever recorded, but instead it became one of the most miraculous rescues of all time. Even now, years later, I think about it. The darkness, the narrow passages, the rushing water, the impossible odds, the global teamwork, the quiet determination of people who refused to let 13 lives slip away underground. If that isn't the closest thing to a real-life horror story with a happy ending, I don't know what is. One time I was on a trip with a new group and a woman fell and fractured 2 ribs. None of us knew this at the time, and being a tough woman, she insisted she was fine, so we kept going. This particular cave was a wet cave with multiple ear dippers. So, we're talking heavy wetsuit territory. Eventually, we reached a decently sized chamber after the ear dippers, and she decided she was going to stay behind and wait for us while we continued on to our objective, which wasn't much farther. So, we set her up with a Palmer heater, gave her a few snacks, and told her we'd be back shortly, maybe in half an hour at most. In hindsight, that wasn't a good idea. When we returned to the room, I was the first one to see her, and what I saw still gives me goosebumps. She was shaking violently, mumbling so badly we could hardly understand her. She was confused, disoriented, all the telltale signs of hypothermic shock. Okay. We still had about 3 hours of caving ahead of us with multiple ear dippers to get through. And now we had someone who again we didn't yet know had 2 fractured ribs in the early stages of hypothermia. At that point it was clear we needed to get the hell out of there and keep a solid pace to generate body heat. We got her up and moving, helped her through the ear dippers, and once she started walking again, she slowly began to come back to herself. Thankfully, we got her out, and for the most part, she ended up okay. But that little excursion definitely made me a lot more cautious when it comes to water-based cave trips. For me, the scariest moment was during a sudden water surge. We weren't sure if we were going to make it out of the cave. We were exploring what I believed to be unmapped passages of an epic system when my friend suddenly said he could hear the exit. He thought he heard faint sounds of cars driving. I told him, "No, that sounds like tons of bats flying. It must be a large room." He replied, "No, it sounds like an airplane flying overhead." I was about to respond, "Dude, we're in the middle of nowhere. No planes fly this close to the ground." When my heart dropped, I realized what was about to happen. We had left our bags behind as we started seeing signs of a nearby exit. The cave was trending upward, and we assumed we'd find a way out soon. I jumped, parkour style, back down and was ready to bolt toward the large area we had come from. But then I realized we'd have to crawl back through a long, tight passage. There was no way we'd make it in time. We were screwed for sure. I turned around and yelled, "We've got to climb up to that huge area up there." The roar of water grew louder. We had no time. In the small room we were in, we climbed to the highest point. Moments later, the surge came pouring in from above. The water was freezing cold. For a minute, we watched it rise, and I prayed. I told the girl I was with that I loved her too, something I had never said before. After a minute or two of helpless panic, we realized the water had stopped rising. It was flowing out. There was no flood risk. Maybe a sump would trap us, and getting hit by the surge on a climb could have been bad, but we were okay. We spent what felt like hours talking about what would happen if we didn't make it. How our friend would miss work the next day. How the people I had told would try to contact us and fail. How the girl would also be missing. How a villager who had let us park in his field would see the car still there in the morning. We imagined how the rescue team would start searching in the wrong direction because they'd follow the obvious path, not realizing we had turned off into a tighter, unmapped section. We talked about how we'd survive by drinking water. The shitty part was that we had left our bags at the entrance of the crawl. We hadn't expected the passage to keep going or to open up into such a huge chamber. We had also seen signs of a nearby exit, and since the cave was trending upward, we kept going, figuring we'd return for the packs later. We never did. That meant our battery life was now limited. Every second with the light on felt risky. If we'd had our packs, we would have had snacks for a day or two, water, space blankets, and light for at least a week on low. So, we sat in the darkness, listening to the sound of raging water above and flowing water below. We huddled together to stay warm. We wouldn't freeze to death. Eventually, the roar became a trickle, then stopped. We had no idea how long we waited. Then came the debate: do we follow the new dry, unexplored passage that might lead out of the cave, or take the same waterlogged route we came in and risk another surge? I did a quick scout of the new dry passage. I was fairly certain it reconnected via an upper route to where we started, but there are no guarantees in uncharted cave systems. It stretched on for so long that I eventually couldn't hear my team anymore. The chamber was huge, pristine, no signs of previous visitors, though it's possible local villagers had been there and left no trace. No arrows, no trash, no footprints. Eventually, we decided that even though the dry passage looked promising, our lights were limited, and we had to take the way we knew. One guy, fearless around water, volunteered to go first and find safe zones, dry pockets along the crawl. Since I was the one who realized it was a surge, I had to go last to listen for another one. The lead man crawled through the tight section and would yell, "Safe haven." Then the second person would move fast to reach him. I went last. The trickling water made it hard to hear if another surge was coming. I had also scouted upstream and saw that water was still flowing in, but also leaving via another route. That meant the earlier surge had been strong enough to overflow a barrier I'd seen. That scared the hell out of me. We investigated because we could hear water flowing, but saw none near us. We needed to know what was happening to make the best decision. So, we continued with the plan in absolute terror that another surge might hit and send us into Big Boss. Big Boss was the tight crawl we had passed through to reach this uncharted section. The rest of the cave was large and safe. This part, we weren't sure if it had sumped. From memory, it was about 5 minutes of painful crawling over rough rocks. It was wide but not tall. If a surge came while inside, we'd be done for. When we reached Big Boss, we stood on the last safe, dry ledge. It was decision time: wait and hope for rescue or push through Big Boss to reach the larger, known chambers. Our packs with all our gear were waiting at the far end of that crawl. The lead man wasn't afraid of water. I don't think he'd ever been caught in a true water emergency. I have. I've been pulled by a riptide in the ocean. I once drowned a dirt bike when water levels unexpectedly rose. I respect water not out of fear, but because I know how unforgiving it is. The lead man crawled halfway into Big Boss, then called back that it wasn't sumped. Turns out Big Boss had an outflow, and we could make it through, if another surge didn't hit. I shouted, "Keep going." I ran back into the cave up to our last safe ledge and told the team to go silent. I listened, heart pounding, held my breath, then yelled, "Go, go, 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 go." The team crawled like hell through Big Boss. It was clear. No surge. But once you were in, you were in. If a surge came, you had to hold your breath and pray to make it out the other side. There was no turning back. The crawl had felt eternal going in. Going back, we agreed there was no time to be careful. We all committed to getting bruised and cut because a slow crawl could mean death. I dove in after them, slammed my body against the jagged rocks, and moved as fast as I could. The lead man yelled, "We made it." I paused, out of breath. Wait, that's it. Going in, it took us 5 to 10 minutes. Coming back, it was maybe 1 or 2 minutes tops. Either that, or we broke speed records. Didn't care. Go. Once we were through Big Boss, our bags were sitting there dry, untouched, as if nothing had happened. Everything was just as we'd left it. We grabbed our gear and got the hell out. We exited past our call-out time, but it was late, and we notified everyone. A rescue might have started the next morning, but thankfully, they didn't need to. Looking back now, I think I have undiagnosed PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from that trip. PTSD is a mental health condition triggered by experiencing or witnessing a terrifying event. In my case, even now, the sound of waterfalls or rivers sends me into a panic. Sometimes, even the sound of strong wind on a mountain makes me feel like something's coming. I get this overwhelming sense of doom. That feeling, the fear that something is about to go horribly wrong, never fully left me after that day. We, or rather I as the trip leader, made several mistakes that led to this situation. I might list them in another post. In short, we were hungover and making stupid decisions. It was the rainy season, and while the forecast was dry, I actually prefer entering during rain. That way, you know what the water is doing. And of course, we left the damn packs behind. And of course, we left the F********************** ing GoPro too. So, we didn't get any footage of the surge. I wish we had. I want to know how bad it actually was. Looking back, maybe it wasn't that bad, but going from silence to the roar of water crashing down rocks, it felt like a monster was coming to kill me.